Does Sigma FP have a future? I'm going to give you 4 reasons and 4 bonuses why it definitely have a future in my heart. I'm going to tell you why I actually bought this camera over the Sony a7S III and even the FS6. Let's talk about it right now. So here it is, the Sigma FP camera. You can see how small and compact it is. I call it the pocket cinema camera. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why this camera is amazing, and I'm going to give you 4 bonuses that you may not have heard of on any YouTube videos. Okay, let's get started. So the reason I bought this camera, now I'll give you a bit of history. I actually own the Sony a7R III, the Fujifilm X-T3, and those 2 cameras is great for doing daytime shot. I would think of using those cameras for my short films, and that would be a great technology to use. However, there was something back in my mind that I really appreciate the Sony a7S III or the a7S in general is because of the low light features. But the recent Sony a7S III was a little bit expensive. It was definitely over my budget. So I was thinking maybe in next 5 years I'll get the FS6, and because that's probably a better choice. However, I said, don't let the technology be the one that stopped me from doing any short film now. There shouldn't be any excuses. So I said, okay, let's get a camera that can do amazing low light features under $2,000. And there we have it. This is the camera I ended up choosing. Now, like I said before, the reason why I chose this camera, in addition to my what I have right now, the A7R III, the X-T3 from Fujifilm, and there's another one that I have, the FS700R, which actually match with this camera because it can do raw CDNG. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But the first reason, the number 1 reason why I got this camera, because it was great in low light. It is comparable to the Sony a7 III and close to the a7S III. If you set it to ISO 3200, which is what our eye can actually see normally at night, this camera can simulate that quality of our eye. I'm glad that Sigma set their 2 native ISO as 100 and 3200. This thing you can crank up to 25,600 ISO, and then this expanded all the way to 100,000 ISO. But I would actually keep it to 25,600 ISO, which is amazing. In fact, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos on this camera, and there's one thing that I observed and concluded, that this Sigma camera is amazing for night scenes. So if you ever decide to make a short films and you need a night camera with very low noise, this is the camera. Other than, of course, the Sony a7S III. But this is like half the price. So that's why I went with that. Okay, that's number 1, low light capability. Number 2, of course, is the price I just mentioned. If you compare that to the Sony a7S III, it's like half the price. You can get this now for around $1,800 US, whereas the Sony a7S III is like $3,500. Okay, that's a little bit too much for me. And in addition, I did not need other features in Sony a7S III like the 4K 120. It's not necessary. Actually, for me, what's more important is the 2K, because most of my short film will be released in the future, if I ever do it, would be on YouTube. And 2K, which is 1080p, is more than adequate. The most important thing is the color science. Okay? And that brings me to the 3rd reason. This camera has amazing color science, especially at night. Now you can check other YouTubers who has this camera, and when they were filming the evening shot, that's why it convinces me that this is a nice camera. If you compare that scene to the a7S III, the color that comes out of this camera at night or evening shot is more brilliant or vibrant than the Sony a7S3. Even if you color adjustment, make adjustment to it. And the reason for that, and that brings me to the third reason, is that it can shoot in RAW internally. Now you can do 2K or 1080p using the SD card, a fast one. You can do 12-bit 1080p or 2K 444. And so that means that when you color grade the 1080p or the full HD video, it will turn out amazing. You can adjust the color anything you want. And because it's filming in CDNG RAW, you can adjust the contrast and ISO or whatever. Like there's a little bar in DaVinci Resolve, you can adjust that accordingly. Right, even if you made a little bit of mistake during your shooting, you can adjust that to bring up the highlights and the shadows. Amazing. And that's why I think the color that you film at night or evening is amazing on this camera, which a lot of people don't talk about. I noticed that through watching a lot of YouTube videos when they were shooting evening and night shot. And the reason for that is because I was interested in a camera that can shoot at night, because I already have an amazing camera already, the FS700R, the Fujifilm X-T3. That would be amazing for a daylight shot. But the evening shot, I needed something that can handle that, night shot. And this camera did it. And it has to be also, the color has to be good as well. And yeah, and I was able to think through that and said, yeah, Sigma will be able to handle that. It can do the CDNG 12-bit 444 RAW internally and also via, if you're doing 4K, you can hook it up to the SD card, and you can use a Samsung T5, which is recommended. However, I'm going to show you later on the bonus feature that I'm going to mention that you don't need to. You can actually use any SSD hard drive and it'll work. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute. So in terms of people worrying about, oh, it's too much memory, you got to spend so much on SSD. Not anymore. You actually can buy a third-party SSD drive, put various SSD inside that casing, and you will be able to have unlimited supply of storage at half the price of Samsung T5. Okay, or if you have a previous SSD lying around, or even a 7200 RPM hard drive, you can use that as well. Of course, you can't record in 4K. You might be able to record 10-bit 444 CDNG HD quality. In addition to CDNG RAW, it's able to record out as ProRes RAW using Ninja 5, right? So if you don't want to use the CDNG, you think is overwhelming for your computer, well, just film it in ProRes RAW in 4K. Now for me, like I said, I film in 2K, so it doesn't really matter. And so on my computer, the CDNG works perfectly. It still works great. And I also save space, and I can color grade amazingly because I can adjust the the contrast and saturation, all that in post. In addition, if you don't like ProRes RAW or you don't like CDNG RAW, well, you can go with Blackmagic RAW, what's it called? The Brawl? Maybe they call it Brawl? Yeah, Brawl. If you buy the Blackmagic Video Assist, I think it's a 12G one, and there we go. 3 types of RAW. There is no other camera I can think of that can do 3 different types. That flexibility is just amazing. Okay, so those are the 4 main reasons why I got this camera. But what about the bonuses that I mentioned? As you can see, the first bonus is that, now you can do that with a lot of other cameras as well, but I think a lot of people mistakenly thinking that, okay, Sigma, it doesn't have a good autofocus, which is true. It doesn't have a good autofocus, but since I'm doing more like short films, and I do take my time when I'm filming, I get my composition right and all that, I don't need run and gun type of scenario unless I use my Fujifilm X-T3 or my Sony a7R3 or the a6100, and that's fine. I can do that kind of autofocus. But for night shot, I do take my time. I like to do a lot of dialogue, drama type of thing. Then we need to just use manual focus. And the key to this, and a lot of people don't talk about, is that this camera allows you to put in different adapters. So I have a lot of Nikon lenses. I was able to hook it up. So you need to get I have the older Nikon, the F mount, connected to the L mount. This is an L mount, Sigma. So with a manual focus lens, by the way, this is a Nikon f1.4 manual lens, and I love this thing. This thing is so buttery smooth. You see, I was able to adjust the focusing knob here. Love it. If you're doing videos, you know, this is the way to go. I love manual focus. And adapting different Nikon classic vintage lens on this camera is a dream, right? And they are also very affordable. Another thing I was able to do, and which is even better than the classic vintage of my Nikon, is, if you don't remember, the Minolta, right? The Minolta A-mount lens that Sony bought over from Minolta company, which doesn't exist anymore. But I have two amazing lenses. Let me show you right now. So here it is. This is the A-mount lens. This is actually a Sony A-mount lens. One is actually Minolta, and the other one is Sony Zeiss A-mount lens. This is a 135 f1.8. This is a 28 to 70 f2.8. And you can buy this aftermarket for under $5. This one you probably get under $1,200 or less. And you know, if you buy from Sony the G Master, you go $3,000 for these things. And this one, if it was a Sony, you know, 24 to 70, that's over $1,500. So these type of classic lens, if you're doing manual focus, amazing, amazing. And what you do is you buy the A mount to L mount adapter, which I did, and all I have to do is put it into this camera. Let me show you right now. And here I have the Minolta. There we go. There I have a beautiful 28 to 70 constant f2.8 cinema lens. A beautiful, amazing lens, as you can see. And the thing I like about this classic Minolta lens, the constant f2.8, it goes 28 to 70. This is a full frame, by the way. And the 28 is the amazing part, right? This is where most of the, in the classic films, they use a 28 mils lens for Super 35, of course. And then I can switch to 40, which is equivalent to, you know, a full frame lens of 40. And you can do that at f2.8. So this lens is so useful. Especially, of course, you can only do manual, and that's what I wanted, manual. And the color that comes out of this lens, it's not the sharpest, because it's, you know, if you're doing 8K, then this is not the lens for you. But for 4K or 1080p, this is a beautiful lens, just beautiful. So yeah, so having able to put in the Minolta 28 to 70 constant f2.8 is great. But here's another beautiful lens here. This is the Zeiss 135. There we go. Oops. Ooh, I don't want to break this expensive lens. 135 f1.8. Oh, beautiful lens. You know about Sony Zeiss lens, the A mount 135 f1.8. You read a lot of review about it, and they said this is one of the best lens out there. Beautiful, smooth bokeh, and a lot of light coming in at night, and the color that comes out is just beautiful. Now imagine putting this on a Sigma full frame 12-bit 444 RAW. You will get, and it's 4K, you will get image that's unmatched. I would say unmatched, even like you can compare that. I'm talking about night shot. The one thing about Sigma, that day shot, I noticed that you don't overexpose this camera. Underexposed is okay. Actually, it's better underexposed with this camera, where most of the camera, okay, this is a very important point. This is what I researched. Most of the camera, including Sony, Nikon, Canon, Fujifilm, they are good when you overexpose them. But the Sigma, for some reason, they designed the camera that you do underexpose your scene, and you can crank that up. You can adjust it later on in post, and it looks beautiful. So my advice to you is, for other camera, you overexpose it. For this camera, and that's what I'm going to be using for it, night shot, underexposing it, this is the camera. Okay, so you got to know your camera, and this camera has that. And now imagine a night evening shot using a Sony 135 f1.8. Light coming in, natural lights, moon shining, bokeh, smooth, and color. Mwah. That's what this camera is all about. And that's why I bought it. It was all about the image quality, the image, the color, the lens that you can put in it, the classic lens. The old lens, still amazingly usable. That's why I thought about the image rather than, oh, it does have the fastest autofocus. So if you're thinking of getting a camera that is all about autofocus, then this definitely is not the camera for you, for sure. All right, so that's about the lens itself. You can adapt to different lens. So the A mount and the Nikon lens, the classic lens, you could do that. Another thing is, so that's the one bonus. The other bonus, I mentioned that, you know, a lot of people who have the Sigma camera, I always see them using the Samsung T5 or even T7 and even the SanDisk Extreme Pro. However, you know what I've discovered, and I'll talk more about this in my other videos because this is getting too long, is that I was able to buy a SSD drive online on Amazon or eBay, this one here, and I was able to find one that's compatible with the Sigma FP, and I'll make a video on this later on. And the good thing about this thing is that the casing you can take out and you can put any SSD card in there. And look at this, I have the Western Digital, I have a couple of these, so I don't need to buy the Samsung T5. I just get one of these and it's pretty fast. And this one costs half the price of the Samsung T5. And the thing is, I got a couple of this, I can just insert it in, download it, offload it, and there I can insert it again. So I can just interchange this. This is amazing. I can interchange it. I don't need to buy another Samsung T5. I just get one of these, you know, the bare minimum SSD and plug it in. Now, because and this one is great still for the 4K, 24 frames per second, 12-bit RAW, okay? But if you decide, like me, I don't care so much about, you know, doing 4K, then even the regular, I'll show you right now, very cheap HP SSD card. This is only 120 gig. And this one is M700, and I was able to do that. Now, of course, this is not fast enough for doing 4K, so I wrote down here I could do HD, 12-bit, 24 frames per second, and that's all I wanted. I want to do 2K and 1080p full HD quality, 12-bit, that's what I want, 24 frames per second. And just using this costs less than 30 bucks. And it will be able to store, you know, for an hour or so because it's only 2K. Of videos, and you can get tons of this. It's almost like getting a cheap SD card, right? So, you know, when people say, oh no, it's gonna be so expensive because it's gonna be, you know, raw, internal, external. Well, depending on how you film it. If you're doing 2K, if you know how to install, you know, a cheap SSD on this Sigma, this is a dream camera. Amazing. Imagine raw, 30 bucks, couple hours of shot. Unheard of. Okay, unheard of. That's what I like about this camera, Sigma FP. All right, what else? Yes, another thing is, people say, oh, you know, the battery, it's only an hour. Okay, an hour is still good, right? It's not that bad, okay? But guess what? No problem. I resolved that by buying a dummy battery, and I was able to get this one. This is actually, by the way, did you know that Sigma use the same type of battery as the Panasonic GH2? That's right. I can't remember. I think it's I gotta look at the name of the. Okay, let me see if I have it right here. It's a BLC12. This is the Panasonic GH2 camera, and it uses the same one. So if you you know, want to buy a cheap battery, a third party, costs you less than 10 bucks, There we go. Your Sigma now has unlimited supply of battery if you're using it this way. Or if you know that it's using the Panasonic GH2, you can buy a dummy battery for that. And now I can plug it in, so I have unlimited power to this camera. Wow. Unlimited power, unlimited storage, full frame, 12-bit 444. What else? Night, low light camera. What more do you want? Well, there is one more. So anyway, the other day I was watching the review on Sigma FP and I saw a video that Philip Bloom published, and he didn't like this camera that much because he was complaining about, I think, one of the two reasons. Actually, one was there was no EVF, okay, which is true. I wish there was an EVF for this camera. And the second reason was that it didn't produce a RAW that is compact and not so big, right? I think it's a compressed RAW or something like that. And so that was his complaint, okay? I don't care, like I said, so much about the compressed RAW and that, because I'm used to doing CD and G RAW, and I'm doing 2K anyway. So my computer can handle it. Okay, so I was able to edit no problem for 2K CD and G, perfect. So Philip Bloom was talking about the flaw of the EVF. Well, I found a solution for that as well. You don't need the second edition of Sigma. Actually, what I want Sigma to do is maybe add more feature to this camera. Like, for example, I would wish that Sigma would release a faster slow-mo, like for example maybe 240 1080p if that's possible, even in dot move, or maybe have a dot move that is 10-bit. Okay, that would be great. Sigma, if you're listening, please do that. And of course other codec would be great as well. But yes, keep improving this camera. I think this is a winner. Like I said, lastly, you do not need an EVF. So the next solution, and the final one, the bonus I'll show you, and I was able to resolve this, is of course, instead of using and complaining about EVF, you can use head-mounted display glass. So I was able to hook up this sunglasses. It's amazing actually. Instead of, in a daylight, okay, usually I don't film the Sigma because this Sigma FP is going to be for evening and night shot anyway, so most likely it doesn't apply to me. But for some of you who want to film during daytime and you can't see the screen, well, this is a LED glasses. Okay, so in other words, you hook up using the HDMI connections to the camera, to the Sigma FP, and then you watch it through this two lens, right? There's actually two lenses here, and you can see your shot. So there we go. And you don't have to worry about the sunlight and all that anymore. You don't need to purchase the the Sigma, what they call it, I can't remember, the loop or whatever on top of that. Looks kind of funny, whereas this one, hey, looks cool, right? Oh yeah, it's cool. And you even have the headphone so I can listen in. So people were complaining about, oh, it doesn't have the headphone jack so I can listen to my audio. Well, once you hook up the HDMI, then you have an audio as well. There we go. I was able to solve 2-in-1. It now has EVF and it has the audio. What more do you want? A pocket cinema that does everything. The only thing it doesn't do well, of course, is the autofocus. But hey, you can't get everything, right? But for the cinematographer, this is a dream. Thanks, Sigma. I hope you're watching this. Continue to improve the firmware. Like I suggest, please get us a 240 frames per second for the HD. Even if it's dot move, please include the 10-bit if possible in this in-camera for the dot move, okay? The format. And I think there's one more that I wanted, but I don't want to overwhelm you. But if you can increase more of the firmware, the features, I would continue on to invest in your company. Thanks, Sigma. I'll see you soon.